my name's Lilja. Today I am going to make a pair of stays. Well, I'm going to make it over a couple days probably. I've looked up a pattern in Patterns of Fashion. I'm going to be making these strapless stays from circa 1789. I'm going to be using this yellow linen for the outside because I really like yellow, and I had some leftover, some thicker linen for linen canvas. I've got the lining. I was thinking of using this cotton drill instead of buckram, just because I don't have the type of buckram that is needed, and I don't really want to make some because that takes ages, and I've really got to finish this by at least end of November. I'm going to be boning it with reed. It was originally with baleen, but you can't really get that. I already have some leftover reed from my first pair of stays. Green ones. They're not very nice. They're also only half boned, so they're not as rigid. It would be nice to have a proper sturdy pair. The pattern in the book is on a grid. I've got some dots and cross paper, so it's gonna be really easy to scale up, hopefully. I'm expecting the pattern not to fit me on first try, just because, well, you know, it's not a commercial pattern. You can't choose size small, medium, large or anything. So I'm gonna make a mock-up first to see where I need to make it bigger, where I need to make it smaller. Okay, let's get started. I've got the paper pattern cut out, and I'm just going to put it on some cotton leftovers I've got and make a mock-up, or a toile. So the pattern is obviously a bit small for me. I don't know if you can do that. I think I need to take the waist up a bit because my waist is, you know, here, but the tabs don't start until like here. I think maybe even 1.5 inches out. It's quite a lot, but yeah. I think the top bit is alright. This one can probably be bit further this way. Cool. I might add 1 inch on each side in the back to give it a bit more space. Yeah. I'm using my toile as a pattern with all of the alterations added, and this bit would have been the buckram layer, but I'm just instead using this quite harsh linen that I think has still got a bit of stiffener from the manufacturer on it. I'm not really too worried about the stiffness. It's going to be fully boned anyways, and with lots of reinforcements. I've cut off the seam allowance so that I can draw the lines, sewing lines, directly on. So I've cut out all the layers now, except the lining. I'm going to do that last. And we've got the inner buckram layer and the linen canvas layer and the outside fashion fabric. And I'm just going to baste them together now. I'm planning on mostly hand sewing this because stays in the 18th century were constructed differently than, for example, modern corsets or even Victorian corsets. Every panel is finished by itself. So we'll do all the boning channels, put all the boning in, and then this will be felled down like that and attached like that. And then these parts will be stitched together using a whip stitch, and obviously I can't really do that on the sewing machine, so most of it's going to be hand sewn because I want it to look the way it would have looked. Even though it's an undergarment, it's nice to, you know, get the proper shape that it would have had, because obviously the shape will change if I did the sewing all the pieces together and turning it inside out and all of that bit. It's spooky time, baby. It's so windy. Shh, wind. It's fucking windy. Spooky, scary. I'm ready to start drawing out the boning channels now. And obviously, since I've altered the pattern, the bones on the pattern aren't going to match up with the bones on my stays. So I'll just use the pattern as a guide. Since it's fully boned, I don't need to think about the distances too much, just where the bones are. Like if they're lying like that, or, you know, all the way. I just need to make sure that the boning channels are big enough for the bones, because it would be a nightmare sewing all of the boning channels and then the bones don't go through. Going slow is the way. I realized that my drawing here wasn't aligned with what it looked like on the pattern, so I decided by just my eyes turning them slightly so that they would meet here, and I very smartly thought I could just do it by hand the same way on the other side, without any measuring. Just do the same as the first side. And I just completely misaimed. And, well, there's supposed to be a couple bones here that wouldn't fit. And the bone that's basically here is supposed to go down here. So basically I'm gonna have to unpick this entire bit and do it again. Should I just say that I did the mistake yesterday and pretend I didn't just not do anything for a day and cried all day in bed?
Up to you.
I think so. I think that's a bit much.
Okay.
Yesterday, I made a mistake. Well, I've kind of not been able to follow the pattern I drew out very well because the channels are just too big. And I also just realised that I'd drawn on the pattern wrong anyways for this one. Like, this line that's here is supposed to be here. Yeah. I honestly do not want to unpick that entire panel. It is only about 1.5 inches off. So instead, I'm gonna pick this one where I've only done 2 boning channels, and just do the same on that side, and hope that it doesn't change the shape too much. So I finally finished the boning channels. Only took me like 3 days. Now I am gonna insert the boning. And it'll probably take a while, but hopefully not as long as the boning channels. I'm putting 2 bones in each channel because they're half raised like that. And if you put them together, they'll like lean on each other and be slightly stronger. So I'm just putting 2 in each channel and shaping the ends so that they line up. Whoops. So, I didn't finish the boning last night. Actually, only did 2 panels. I mean, they were really big. So, this morning I re-soaked the weed. Re-soaked the reed. So this morning I re-soaked the weed. And like, I can't use it when it's super soggy because it expands a bit and it just doesn't go through the boning channels at all. So I'm just waiting for it to dry up a little bit so that it shrinks again. God, I can't talk today. So that it shrinks again and I can get it through the boning channels, because I've been trying for like 20 minutes to get this through and it's not happening. And these boning channels are the same size as these, so there shouldn't really be an issue. And I'm just incredibly impatient. So in the meanwhile, I'm just watching YouTube videos, waiting. So I finally finished all of the boning channels. It took me 2 days and I had to re-soak the reeds about at least 3 times, I think. And then, you know, soak them for about an hour and then let them dry for an hour so they weren't like soaking. But I did it. My hands are really, really sore and swollen from it. It was quite tough work. I totally get why this was seen as like a tough man job in the 18th century, because you gotta have a lot of strength. The channel can't be too wide because then the bones will just fall out. But they can't be too tight either because then you can't get the reeds in. So you have to have like a perfectly sized channel. And that's really difficult. So sometimes they weren't perfectly sized and I had to like squash the bones in. But I figured out like a technique to do most of it. It just really hurt my hands. Then I'm on to the next step, which is just finishing all of the pieces. And I'm gonna cut down the 2 under layers a bit and then just fold it over and whip stitch it down and do that on all of the layers. But I'm not gonna do the top or the bottom because that's gonna be bound. So yeah, that's my next step. Come on, washing machine. There we go. So I've finished stitching all of the pieces together, and one thing I like about 18th century is that it doesn't need that to be that nice on the inside. It's all gonna get hidden by lining. They're not as obsessed as Victorians are with like beautiful invisible stitching. So yeah, I think next step is gonna be doing eyelets so that I can try it on. And hopefully it doesn't need any further alterations. I've noticed that I've not been thorough enough when cutting out the pattern pieces, because that does not match. So I'm gonna see how it looks like on, and I'm probably just gonna have to cut off this bit here. But that's a problem for future me. So I'm gonna move on to eyelets. So I have one issue, which is I don't have a busk. I couldn't find one online that I liked, and that's the shape I want. And so my initial plan was I was just gonna go outside, cut down a branch and, you know, like whittle one. But then I realized that I live in a city and I think it'd be frowned upon to walk about with a knife just in the streets. So this is plan B. It's the handle of a wooden spatula. I'm gonna try and see if I can just flatten one edge and like make the other side pointy, and if that'll work. See if this is a good idea or if I've just shot myself in the foot. So I've whittled my spatula down quite a bit now. Got one flat edge and then a pointy bit, like it goes in a triangle. It's kind of like a triangle. I don't even describe things. I think the shape is quite nice. It's definitely about the same size and shape as the original busk, but it's a bit wonky. Obviously, I did not have any proper equipment to do this. I just used a kitchen knife and a nail file. Professional. Okay, sorry. Getting carried away. The shape is quite nice. I think that's going to be the down side, just because it's thinner at the top, it seems, on the pattern. It kind of looks a little bit like a little sewing needle. It's quite cute. I'm not gonna make it super fancy. Like I've seen like ones with like super intricate detailing and like, you know, like carvings. I think I might put my initials on it and the year it was made, but I don't think I'm gonna do any flowers and stuff because I do not have time for that. Now I just need to figure out how it goes into the stays because honestly, I had no idea. I've had a look at the pattern and I think I've figured out how this is supposed to be done. So I think first of all, there's a little kind of pocket bit, like a little placket that goes behind the opening. I think that one needs to go on first. And then I'll place the busk and put the final buckram layer over and stitch it down to the placket and the canvas, because I had a look at, there's like a photograph of it where like it's kind of been, you can peek a bit under the lining and it looks like there's quite loose stitches just stitching around it, holding it in place, just catching the canvas so it doesn't show on the front. So I think that's what I'm supposed to do. It makes sense, I hope. We'll see if I can figure out how to do this nicely. So I'm just gonna lay some linen canvas along the edge here. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna trace it and then cut it. I don't really need to make a pattern for this, I think that would be unnecessary. I think I might just leave the top edge raw because I might have to cut it down later anyways. One good thing about like filming is that you can talk to yourself and you know, it's not weird because you're not talking to yourself really. So remember when I said that's a problem for future me? Well. When I said that, I thought that this panel was just too long, that I'd accidentally made it too long, and that I could just cut it down. That's not the case. I've somehow managed to stitch these two panels too low in relation to that panel. So now the backs are uneven. So I'm gonna have to unpick probably just a little bit on the reinforcements, but I'm gonna have to unpick this entire seam and realign it so that it matches, because otherwise this is gonna look So I'm now putting on the bottom reinforcement bits, and it basically just goes along the waist and it kind of ends just above all the tabs, so that I think it's to just reinforce the tabs so they don't rip up. But I think this needs to be sewn in because it's at the waist where there's a lot of different shape, like the shape changes. I think I might need to bend it while I sew so that when it's on, it's not buckling. I made myself a little fishhook needle. Didn't have any, but I realised that it was really difficult to stitch while holding this like that. I think I'm gonna start on the inside and then just roll it along as I go. I've finished the waist tape now. I think it serves its function, and I had to kind of be a bit funky with it because it needs to bend that way. But I think my next step is the belly pieces, and then I think the little placket and the busk and the top bit. I think I'm gonna fasten this one first, and then this one on top, and that one on top, but just stitch all of them loosely down here. My hands hurt so much from all the hand stitching and the whittling. So I'm onto the placket now. I just turned it over and like fell down the hem so that it is not raw. And then I've fell down the sides here. And now I'm going to stitch it down firmly so that, hold on, so that it'll be held in place. So I think I'm going to stitch it along this line here where I've got my basting stitch from earlier so that it doesn't move about too much, because I think the busk is supposed to be fastened to it at the bottom. So I don't want it to like flop all over the place. I bled on my stays. Now I've got blood, sweat and tears on it. So the busk is in now. I think I'm happy with how it is. I'm actually a bit unsure about how it's supposed to be done, but I think it works all right. I think it can move about a bit in the pocket just so that if I need to open this, that doesn't get hindered. I think the next step will be to bind the edges. It looks like on the original that the bottom binding is done first, and then the seam hiding ones, the tape that goes over the seam to protect and hide them. I think that goes on second, and then the top goes on last. I've only got that and the lining left, and the rail pocket rails, but that's going to be last, so I might just not do it in this round. We'll see. So first off, I gotta cut off the seam allowance on the bottom. So I've got this 3/4 inch linen tape, and it's the same style as the ones I'm using for the lacing and hiding the seams. And I'm just gonna stitch it on at the bottom now. I'll do one side first and then I'll move on to the other side. How does the end look? I'm just now stitching on the binding, the top binding, and then I've only got the lining left, and then I'm finished finally. I finished the binding, finally. And it is just the lining left now. And then it'll be finished and I can move on to the dress that I'm slightly behind on. For the lining, I'm not going to bother tracing out the pattern just because I've altered it while I've been, you know, making it. So I think I'm just gonna put my lining fabric over and just trace along and kind of just fit it a bit. I think that will be best.